name is Jim Blackburn, and this is the third and the last hour of a continuing education program entitled Making the Most of Now. I don't know when you are actually seeing this particular hour, but I'm taping it in the early morning hours before it is light. It's going to be light pretty soon, but it's not yet there. That sort of symbolizes my time during the year of 1993 and all the years that followed thereafter, after I left the practice of law in 1993. Looking back more than 20 years ago to that time, it is hard, quite candidly, for me to believe that I went through that and came out the other side. It would have been easy for me to have failed. Indeed, most people thought that I would. But I have been able to come back just a bit and start over my life just a bit, because in large part I had the overwhelming support of terrific friends, terrific family, terrific lawyers, and just lots of people who were strangers that I met. It is very difficult to start over or to come back on your own. All of us need help. And in order for all of us to make the most of today or now in our life, in our career, or in the program about ways to make you better at what you do, we need, or at least I need, the terrific support and help of other people. And I am grateful that I had that. That has stood me in good stead. If I were you, I was a paralegal or a lawyer today, I would seek to become the kind of person that others would gravitate to when they were in trouble. I would seek to become the kind of person that others could trust when they were in trouble, in confidence, and rely upon. I'm always reminded of the words of my good friend and lawyer Wade Smith, who said to me one time, "Jim, if you had asked me to take off my shoes and socks and walk barefooted to Durham, 26 miles away from Raleigh, I would have taken my shoes and my socks off and I would have started." That's what friends do. That is also the concept and the mindset that I believe that lawyers and paralegals should have. Taking off your shoes and socks to walk barefooted. Would you start? Would you do that for a client? And here's the thing. It may be, hopefully not, but it may be that at some point in your own life, you will need to ask for help. You will need to trust someone. And you will want to find someone just like that, who is able to listen to you, to be empathetic with you, to be compassionate with you, to not be judgmental with you. That's what you would want, I think. That is surely what I needed and wanted. As 1993 dawn with a new year. I was on the cusp of falling off a ledge from which I would not return. I don't think I knew that. I'm glad I didn't know that. I knew there were issues out there. I knew I was not doing everything well and correctly, but I thought that I could keep it in balance. And then in mid-January of that year, it all fell apart. And as one of my former law partners said to, not to me, but to someone else, and I think I overheard it or someone told me what he said, was this was the day that Jim Blackburn's life was shattered. And I remember speaking to one of those lawyers a few days later and said, I'm hoping to sort of manage how everything plays out. And he said to me in his office, Jim, you can't do that. It's going to explode apart. You can't keep it together and you can't manage it. He was right. So lots of people, not just me, go through a really dark time. My dark time, quite frankly, is not nearly as bad or was not nearly as bad as others. One of the things that I have been so blessed with over the last number of years in doing live programs to people all across North Carolina and in other states is that I have been able to meet some of the greatest people in the world. And I find everywhere, in every city, every town, every place, great courage on the part of many people. I want to tell you about two stories. First, there was a lady in Asheville who had developed breast cancer more than 10 years ago. And she had a mastectomy to help fix her cancer. She's been in remission now for over 10 years. She's still working and doing well. Her health is no longer as fragile and as life-threatened as it once was. But one of the first things she asked the doctor when she realized what was wrong, or he realized what was wrong, was, is this survivable? He assured her that it was. And she said to him, please tell me what doors I have to walk through to make that happen. And I will walk through those doors. That, she said, was one of the best things that ever happened to her in her life. Because getting sick as she did, it changed her concept of who she was, what she did, what her purpose was, how important her family was, how important her life was to her. It mellowed her. She looked at everything differently. She truly makes the most of now. And it has made her a better paralegal. It has made her a better advocate for her clients and the lawyers with whom she works. Another paralegal in a small eastern North Carolina town, less than an hour's drive south of Raleigh, told me the story where her own 17-year-old high school volleyball playing, long blonde hair, beautiful child was almost killed in a car accident the day after Christmas, 1993. The same year that I pleaded guilty to charges and was sentenced. She did not die, though the car tumbled out of control after going around a curve at over 100 miles an hour. She was in the back seat. Her friend sitting in the front seat was killed. But this little girl's life changed forever. She no longer speaks, walks, or talks, and has been in a nursing home all the years since. Her mother and her father see her every day, and they brush her teeth and comb her hair and talk and visit with her. And her room is decorated like a high school kid's room, with scrapbooks and pictures that hopefully give her some comfort. She goes to church in a special van every Sunday. The parents believe that her life has truly been a blessing, and they are grateful for it. Rather than being bitter, they have rejoiced in her life, because the people who have visited her or visited their own relatives in this particular nursing home have all spent time coming by to see her. They have made the most of what they have. They have done as much as they can do. And so I want to urge you here in this last hour to stretch yourself, to try to become better at who you are and what you do. Don't settle. Don't ever settle. Try to push the envelope. Squeeze as much as you can out of every day that you have. As a paralegal, as a lawyer, and as an individual. Try to make the most of now. That's what you have. The darkness that enveloped me in 1993, strangely enough, began to go away as soon as it all fell apart and became public. It was painful. It was embarrassing. It was humiliating. It was awful. I was not employed. Within 3 months, I was no longer a licensed attorney in good standing with the bar, as I turned my license into them in April, just a few short months after this all came apart in January. It was not the life I thought I was going to have. I thought for a time my life was coming to an end. And it was difficult for me to do much of anything except to put one foot in front of the other. Over time, I learned the great wisdom, the great value of unconditional friendship, and unconditional love, and unconditional support. That's what so became important to me. And slowly, through the course of the spring and the beginning of summer, I began to improve. I began to get better. Lawyers did things for me that seemed small, that had nothing whatsoever to do with my case. For example, my son was graduating from high school that year, and I remember asking Wade Smith to speak with Colin Willoughby, the DA, and to hope and work that any indictment that might come from the Wake County Grand Jury or the District Attorney's Office not come until after high school graduation. And he said, I can take care of that. And he did. And Colin did. That's really unique. That is something that a lawyer can do that has a big effect on a client. Pay attention to small things that have no basis perhaps in the strict law that you can do to help facilitate your client or their situation. You can do that as a paralegal or as a lawyer. In mid-July of that year, one summer day, it was a Friday, I learned through telephone calls with Wade and Rick Gammon, my other friend and lawyer, that I was going to be indicted by the grand jury within a few days. And that they believed that it would be a severe punishment for me, and that I was going to be even poorer in the future than I was at the present time, and that we would have to sell the house where our family lived, the furniture and everything else, and become totally destitute. At that time, we had lived in this house for, oh, I don't know, 10 or 11 years. It was home. It was where my children, had grown up. And so I felt partly responsible, not partly responsible, totally responsible for all the bad stuff that was happening to everyone. I fell that Friday night, sitting in the basement of my home, in a chair, into as deep a dark feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and aloneness as I have ever felt in my life. One of the articles that I have read on the issue of suicide is that people who feel really alone and feel as though they are no longer capable of taking care of themselves or their family and have the means by which to do it are at severe risk of taking their lives. Those criteria, at first glance, were present with me. I did not feel as though I could take care of my family. We were going to have to sell the house. I felt very much alone because I had caused all this, and I thought, I did not think, nor could I have ever imagined, that my life would end this way, so abruptly and so short. I could see no future. None. I really didn't have the means by which to do it because I didn't, own the easy way out, which was a gun. And I didn't want to go jump off of a bridge or in front of a car. I didn't have enough pills, didn't like knives, so I didn't know quite how to accomplish this. So I decided I would drive my car about 5 or 6 hours south, down the interstate, to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where we'd gone on family vacations in past years, and drive somewhere and park my car and walk onto the beach, one last time, and then simply walk into the water and drown. That's what I was planning to do. It got dark that night, and after dinner, and telling everyone what was happening, I went upstairs to our bedroom, got my keys off the dresser, and turned around and saw my daughter Stacy, who had just turned 14 years old. And she asked me where I was going, and I said, well, I thought I might go for a drive. And she said, well, would you like me to go with you? And I said, no, I don't think so. Well, where are you going? And I said, well, I thought I might go for a drive. And she said, would you like me to go with you? And I said, no, I don't think so. And she said, where are you going, Dad? And I said, well, if you must know, I thought I might go to the beach. And she said, and just what is it that you think you're going to do when you get there? And I said, well, I thought, I might go for a swim. And she said, Dad, if you do that, I will never forgive you. I've forgiven you a lot already. I will not forgive you if you do that. And I argued back with her. I said, Stacy, you don't understand. They said we're going to be poor and have to sell the house soon. And she said, Dad, what are you talking about? I said, well, I have money or access to money. It will pay off the house. And she said, how are you going to do that? I said, well, I've got life insurance. It will pay off. She said, Dad, that may be the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say. And I said, you don't understand. It is a lot of money. And she said to me, Dad, we love you. Don't do that. Don't even think about that. I said, Stacy, you don't understand. It's a lot of money. And she paused and she looked at me somewhat quizzically and said, well, how much money are you talking about? And I laughed. And I said, well, it's $600,000. It's a term life insurance policy. It will pay off. I have checked the policy. We're okay on this. And she looked at me, she said, oh my God, I had no idea. That is a lot of money. Sit down, let's talk about it. I may change my mind and want you to go after all. We both laughed. And it was this laughter, this telling of this story to her that broke this spell of self-pity, I suppose, on my part, and allowed me to think that there might be a future. It happened in a minute. It all changed. In a minute, it all changed. The rest of the evening, incredibly, was upbeat. I talked to a couple of friends on the phone, talked to Stacy and my family again. Went out later that evening with Wade Smith to an IHOP in Raleigh and talked about my case and relaxed. And the thoughts of taking my life and ending my life were gone forever in a minute. I told this story to the minister at our church. I was sitting in his office and he said, this reminds me of a book which I want you to read. And the book is titled Magnificent Defeat. And it stands for a simple principle that sometimes we have to go through a very dark stage in our life, something we don't want to go through in order to come out the other side and be better. It is based upon the concept of the Garden of Gethsemane. One of the best postcards that was ever written to me during this time was from one of my former law partners in Charlotte, who said in part, Jim, all of us have to go through our own private Gethsemane at some point in our life. It is a part of being human. Well, I did. It did not end quickly. It did not end in a skinny minute. It took some time to come out the other side. But the truth of the matter was, I went through this period of darkness that night where I was thinking about taking my life. And in a few seconds or a minute, it all turned around. Now, the road back was long and hard and difficult. That did not end in a minute. Your clients whom you see may not be like this, but there may come a day, one time in the future, where you have a client, and they're in a criminal case, a civil case, a domestic case, which of course is civil, someone who is sued for malpractice, whatever, who is going through his or her own dark personal journey. And you need to be able to help them find their way back. That is much practicing law as anything I can think of. That is professionalism at its zenith, at its very best. That is the best practice of law. Can you do that? Can you try? Whether you're a paralegal or a lawyer. Well, the year of 1993 went by slowly. I went, as I've told you before, for lots of walks, lots of conversations with people, and I tried to keep a journal where I would write down what life was like for me during that time. I still have it, or at least many of the pages of it. I don't read it often, but from time to time I will. And I'm amazed at the constant theme that goes through this journal. I am living my life. I am trying to get better one day than I was the day before. And that's what we do. We take it one step at a time. Now, if you're practicing law today and trying to improve, you can't improve dramatically overnight. It takes small steps, steps one at a time to get better. But you can do this. You can figure out a way to become the lawyer or the paralegal you want to do. You can find the niche in your life. And so for me, it was this concept or this idea that I would accept my lot and try to find out which doors I could walk through to make my life whole again. It would not happen overnight. It would take time. It would take therapy. It would take going to prison. It would take stories in the newspaper. I am a composite today of all of the things that I went through and experienced that make me who I am now, for good or for bad. I'm a part of it, just as you are. Just as you are. Try to be better today than you were yesterday. Try harder today than you did yesterday. Try to stretch yourself. Try to squeeze more out of today than you did yesterday. Don't put things off to the future. Don't rely on past victories, past wins, past accomplishments. to sustain you going forward. That may or that may not happen. Try to find out how you can rekindle passion in your life. Can you do that? Can you find some passion in your life and make it work for you? How would you do that? Can you keep a journal? Can you keep a gratitude journal? Can you show up and be on time? Can you put grudges aside? Can you not live in the past? Can you live financially within your means? Can you be grateful that you have clients, even though they drive you crazy, even though you'd like to get rid of them sometimes? Can you recognize that without those clients, you would have no job, no future, and so you need those clients? Could you realize that being a lawyer or being a paralegal, just being someone who can work day to day in the legal system, is a great honor? If you're a lawyer, take a moment today and go in your office and look at your license to practice law and read it. And read what it says. It says attorney and counselor at law. You can interpret those words, counselor at law, in a variety of different ways. You can interpret it narrowly to mean only strict analysis of law, which is what you were trained in law school to do. Or you can interpret the words counselor at law in a broader sense and recognize that because of your training, your experience in life with clients and dealing with people with adversity, you have picked up some experience and some beliefs and understandings how you can help clients get through a difficult time. People oftentimes are in pain. Clients may oftentimes be in pain. You have a unique opportunity to help them, to treat them as you would wish to be treated, or as you would wish your children to be treated. Don't treat them like they are a file. Don't treat them like they are just simply a paycheck or a retainer to you. Treat them as though they are the most important person in the world. Because while you are dealing with their situation, you are. I wish more than I can tell you that I had acted more this way. That's said by every person in the world who's ever done something wrong. I wish I could change it. That's said by every person who's done something wrong. I wish I could change it. But I can't. That is hard for me to accept. It is still incredulous to me that I did the things that I did. It is still incredulous to me that I was not better at what I did. I wasn't always bad, but a few times I was. And that changed me forever. Do not let that happen with you. Don't let that change you forever. I think the key ingredients that I want to talk about in these last few minutes of this hour are passion, true passion for what you do, true passion for your clients, really being gung-ho and interested in resolving their case. It's the most important case to those clients. It may not be to you because you have lots of them, regardless of what kind of practice you have. But your clients only have one case, and you're the only lawyer they have. You're the only paralegal they talk to. You're the only law firm they go to. Try to make the best of that. I would be empathetic to them. I would listen to them. I would pay attention to what they said. When they asked me for the 10th time if I could call them or explain something to them, I would do so. I would ask my assistants to help me in doing that if I could not always do that. I would try to be understanding. I would recognize that a client is like being thrown overboard into the water from a boat. And the boat is sailing away. And if you don't see them, and you don't throw them a rope or a lifeline, they're not going to make it back on the boat. They may be wet when they get back on the boat. They may be soggy. But if you throw them a lifeline and you hold on, they have a chance to get back on the boat. That's what being a client is like. They want and need a life preserver. You need to throw it to them. And then you need to hang on and pull them back as best you can. And if you will look at your clients' situations that way, then I think it will help you figure out how you're supposed to treat them. You know, I don't really like heights a great deal. I really don't. I wish I was okay with it. I wish I could walk across the swinging bridge at Grandfather Mountain easily. I think it'd be a great view. A great view. But I can't do that. I don't want to do that. That would be akin to my not wanting to get into trouble and being a client. I would rather do anything, almost, than that. Though I know, theoretically, I can go across the bridge and come back and live. But it's dicey for me. Well, one of the ways to look at this is whether or not you're willing to go with someone across that bridge as a companion, perhaps even holding his or her hand, telling them that they are going to be okay, that they are going to make it, how proud you are of them, and help them get to the other side, and if necessary, walk back. They will be proud that they did it. They will remember you forever, that you went with them. You may be a guide who walks many people across that bridge. They only go one time. And so it's important to them that they go with someone whom they can trust and whom they can look up to and who they can hold on to and who they can believe in. And you want to be that person to them. Another trait that is so important for you to have, I think, is the trait of humility. you might not associate humility so much with lawyers or people in the legal profession, but it's a good trait to have. It's a good thing to think about. It's a good way to be. It gets you lots of kudos. It has to be real. It has to be sincere. I never really thought too much about humility as a character trait until I was waiting tables at the 42nd Street Oyster Bar in Raleigh in the mid-1990s. I had to wear, like everyone else, a waiter's uniform, which is different from a lawyer's uniform or a coat and tie. I had a tie, it was a bow tie. I had wine-colored suspenders, black polyester pants with a stripe down the side, an apron that was white. Mine was not white most of the time because I generally was a slob and spilled stuff on it too much. But that's what I did. And I had to learn that it was okay if people who had once seen me as a lawyer now saw me as a waiter. And I can't help but think that some people, when they first learned that I was working there, expressed surprise and amazement that I would do that, and thought it was so sad. And then after a few weeks went by, and they perhaps had seen me there and spoken about it to their friends, they said things to me like, "We're so glad to see you. We hoped you would wait on us. We hoped you would take care of us tonight." Do you know that even today, all these years later, on occasion I still run into people who say, "Well, you waited on me at 42nd Street. I saw you there all the time." Let me be straight with you. Incredibly, even though I have fallen badly in the papers in my life, and everyone knew about it, I still had a lot of pride, probably false pride. It was still hard for me to be seen doing things that other people do all the time. There is absolutely nothing wrong, none whatsoever, with working in a restaurant. It's one of the best jobs in the world. Many Americans do it in their lives all the time. Perhaps you who are watching this have worked in a restaurant, which is a great working experience. And I only have admiration for people who do. It's one of the most difficult and challenging and hard jobs in the world. To be nice to the public who sometimes isn't nice back, and to smile when you don't want to smile, and to be cheerful when you don't feel cheerful, and to live in the moment of whatever time it is when you're working at the restaurant. I remember one Saturday night at 42nd Street. It was 9 or 10 o'clock. We were full in the dining room. And I had 3 booths up there. And there were people, I think, there that night that I knew. I don't remember that particularly, but oftentimes there were. And the tables, you could pull them out from the wall and reset the table with tablecloths and the wine bottle and the sugar and the salt and all that sort of stuff. And lots of times, because we were busy, the bus boys weren't getting around to cleaning your table. And I realized that if I would go ahead and bus my own table, get a pan, put the dirty dishes in there and take them off, and then go back and reset the table, I could get another table sooner and therefore make more money quicker. Well, on this particular night, I was winding up doing that, and I don't know, but at one point I was really tired. And so I just lay down on one of the benches in the booth for just a few seconds on my back and looked up at the ceiling, and people were walking by and eating their dinner. And then when I got up, I sort of smiled and said, you know, if I can do this, I can do anything. If I can do this, I can do anything. I remember one night, late, probably also a weekend night, when I wanted to get off early. I was about through and wanted to go have a glass of wine or some shrimp or something like that with the other wait staff who also had gotten off. This was a nightly ritual at the oyster bar. And my side work at the end was to sweep the front line, which is not very difficult. The most difficult thing about that is, frankly, finding the dustpan somewhere in the building and a broom, because they always disappear. And just as I was getting ready to do that, 4 people, 2 couples, both of whom I knew well, walked into the restaurant and sat down at the oyster bar right in front of me to order some oysters, seafood, a drink, something like that. And I was terrified. I did not want them to see me sweaty, dirty, late at night, sweeping the floor at the restaurant. I thought that was something I did not want them to see. And so for a couple of minutes, I hesitated on what to do. And finally, the urge to want to have a glass of wine and go eat with my friends overcame me. It was more powerful than my pride. And so I walked up to them with holding my broom in one hand and went over to where they were sitting and spoke to them. I wanted to preempt them from seeing me. I wanted to tell them what I was going to be doing. And do you know, to a person, they could not have been nicer to me than they were. They could not have been. And they said, well, hurry up, Jim, go ahead and finish sweeping and go over there and have a glass of wine. You probably earned it tonight. I bid them goodbye and went ahead and did just that. You know, the truth is, if you will confront your fears, if you will have enough humility to learn that you can do these things, you will do well. What I learned, and I don't know that I would have learned it any other way, is that people truly will fall almost in love with you if you're doing the very best you can, and you're doing it as honorably as you can, and you are working as hard as you can. I believe, though I haven't practiced law in a long time, that if you approached your clients that way, to do the very best you can, every day, as hard as you can, you would do so well. You would make the most of now. You would make yourself better at what you do. You would be remembered so well, not necessarily for the richest lawyer or richest paralegal in terms of money, but the richest lawyer and the richest paralegal in terms of friendships, grateful clients, and a happy future. That is the way to enjoy what you do. That is the way to get back the feeling of passion for what you do in the practice of law. You can do this. Do not depend on anybody else to give you those feelings. Don't be dependent on anyone else to make you happy. Don't depend on anyone else to make you passionate. You have to go out and take it. And you have to go out and seize it. And you may have to swim against the current to get there. It may be long and it may be arduous, but it is one heck of a journey, and I urge you to try it. You know, as I finish this last hour, I want to ask you one last question. How do you get back passion? You get it back by trying your best and trying the hardest and being the best you can be. Let me know that. Send me an email and I will recognize that you have watched this last hour of Making the Most of Now, and I will be so happy to send you your certificates, and I will be so happy to turn your time in to the North Carolina State Bar. Thanks very much.